Hello and welcome to our expert webinar, Product Development Focus, Automation, Intelligence, and Simplicity, with our guest Srishti Sofat, Group Vice President of Oracle Customer Experience Marketing, in conversation with Anand Narayan, our Chief Product Officer here at Simplilearn. We will be doing several polls during the webinar. Here's the first one. Just briefly, how much work experience do you have? We'll give Srishti and Anand an idea of who's in our audience. And also, how are you doing today? Are you feeling well, okay, or a little under the weather? And our results show that we have a very experienced audience today. And we also have everybody feeling pretty well, except for one or two people. I hope that you will feel better after you hear what Srishti and Anand have to say. With that, I'm going to introduce Anand Narayan, who is the Chief Product Officer of Simplilearn, and allow him to introduce Srishti.
Thank you, Stuart. Appreciate you giving me the mic. I wanted to welcome all our users here and audience here who have come from LinkedIn, YouTube, or directly through the link that you have received. Welcome to this forum. Very excited to see the level of experience that we have in front of us, and also, really excited to see the number of participants here. Quite a good turnout. So thank you for being here today. We're going to have it very casual. We're going to have a good conversation. I look forward to seeing the questions that come to us. And we do have a very special guest today. And Srishti, by the way, is a Group Vice President at Oracle, and she manages the customer experience marketing, has a lot of experience in building, scaling world-class internet consumer and SaaS enterprise products. And she provides strategic, technical, operational leadership to a global organization and has built up a culture, product innovation, and execution there. She has been solving literally every problem that's possible in the product domain or marketing domain. If you think about it, marketing automation, personalization, loyalty, mobile, MarTech, consumer search, you name it, right? And for someone at her level, she has a track record of hiring A players, building strong teams, and leading geographically distributed teams as well. She has done her Bachelor's of Engineering in Computer Science from NIT Surthkal and is an MBA from the University of Washington. So Srishti, really big welcome to you, and really good to have you here.
Hello, Anand, and hello, everybody. Good evening and good morning, based on which geography you're in. Maybe afternoon also, if somebody's in London. But very glad to be here and looking forward to having this conversation. Definitely passionate about the subject. So looking forward to having a good conversation with you, Anand, on this.
Wonderful. And Srishti, I'm going to ask a question straight away, which is going to be sort of what I consider a dumb question, but I think it's important. This topic is about automation intelligence to create great customer experiences, right? And, the question, first of all, that comes out, why is this relevant? Why is this important? Why does this matter? Maybe you can set up sort of a ground, reality for us, and then we'll get into the real meat of it.
Right. I think, today, and, this is a special year for all of us. I think it's been, technology is mainstream, just based on the fact that all of us have been, sort of stuck at home and doing a lot of things which technology has been an enabler. But having said that, I think really, the world is changing, right? Today you kind of have, like in a world of 7 billion, like 5 billion people have cell phones, right? You kind of have internet as important as electricity, right? You kind of have 5G here, right? You kind of, I think it's 1.5 trillion photographs, digital footprint out there. So, it's just, all of this is out there. All of us as consumers are using, whether it's the iPhone or a smartphone, we're using it. Many of us are using the Alexas. We are, using Swiggy or Netflix or Uber. Again, you're kind of using all of this. And what is very clear is that simplicity is becoming very important. We all look at iPhone. We all want to use a product which is easy to use, which is good to, has a great design. Whether you look at Alexa and being able to have a conversation with the machine, that's becoming normal, right? So we are surrounded by technology, and we are able to consume it today pretty much like we used to turn on the television, right? So the complexity of the software has to start getting hidden more and more, and we see that. And I think this is very, very relevant for people who are building products in this age, right? So if you are not aware of some of these basic tenets, that simplicity is the key for the consumer, and behind the scenes, the technology is powering that, whether it's through intelligence and automation, and we can talk a lot more about that. But I think, I think we have, keep swapping places, we as consumers and we as the people behind the scenes, and figure that out. That's really, that's where this is headed. So that's why I thought this is probably a relevant conversation for this evening.
Absolutely. I think, Srishti, some people call it digital disruption, some people call it digital transformation. These are all really big words, right? And we're going to get into the meat of that in a few minutes. But, you started talking about it a little bit into the why. But if you think of the consumer's expectation from digital disruption, digital transformation, what do you think are the new expectations that the folks have from what the new reality is?
Right. Yeah. See, when I look at digital transformation, for a minute, going back to what a company thinks of it, and then, at one level, then the consumer consumes it, right? I mean, we really think of it as back office and front office, right? So if you think about, back office being your payroll processing, your procurement. So if you're in industry, you're doing all of that in the back office. In that scenario, the customer is, not seeing it. It's happening behind the scenes. Now, when you come to CX, we are talking about the experience of, what is the front office, which is that means how the customer interacts with you. What is that digital transformation, right? So that's really, to me, the definition of, customer experience. So I think really customers, what we want as customers from the brands that we are working with is, today when we talk about digital transformation, I think it's about how we discover the brand, how we engage with the brand, how we consume the services of the brand, and how they provide service to us. I think these four tenets are the key pillars of digital transformation, right? So, and we can go more into examples, right? I mean, in the sense, do you have an online presence? Can I even find you there? How do you reach out to me? What is your marketing? Is it personalized? Is it not? How are you engaging with me? Is my experience easy, right? Today we all are, I'm using Google Pay quite a bit. Even when I go to the club and park or for a run in the morning, I can, buy a little juice with Google Pay, right? So I can just run with my phone. So it's the ease of use to consume and transact, right? It's the service, it's the return policy. It doesn't matter, right? So, I mean, I think it is about transforming all of those. And I think that's really what the customer experience is all about. Can you change those touch points?
Wonderfully said. Take the complexity, make it easier for the user. That's really what this is all about. Right. Now I'm going to turn to the audience a little bit. I have a question for you all, and I think Stuart is going to put the poll hopefully on our forum here. I'm very curious. We have a lot of people who are pretty senior, some people who are a little more early in their career. In terms of your involvement in a digital disruption or digital transformation project, directly or indirectly, I'm very curious. How many of you all have, see this as a priority right now for your company at this point of time? Love to hear a yes or a no. And of course, this is a bit of a plug question. This is an audience that's come for this topic, so I'm assuming there's a lot of yeses here.
Let's see who surprised us. Let's see how many know this. Those are the folks to convince.
Absolutely.
Answers are still coming in, so we'll give it a few more seconds.
All right, wonderful. We'll give it a few seconds. All right, Stuart, shall we take the answers and look at what came back? Wonderful. And I think, this is pretty, like I said, it's a plug question. You're all here to understand, what does digital disruption really mean? How do we improve customer experience? So it absolutely makes sense. So we're going to get into the meat of the conversation now. I think, one thing that Srishti, you talked about is that the product is starting to get more into customer experience, right? How has the focus on how a product works, how has it shifted towards more of a customer experience? I think you started talking about the back office, front office analogy, right? But when you look at the products that you've been part of, the experiences that you've been part of, how has that balance shifted in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, because our focus is customer experience, we are really talking about the front office, right, where a customer is interacting with a brand. And I think that we have moved away, even in the digital products that we are building today, for it to be pure functionality to an experience, right? I mean, you've already seen that in consumer products, right? I mean, the iPhone is the example, right? I mean, it's not about making a call. It's not just about that. There is a bunch of things about owning an iPhone, right? Which is sort of a consumer product, if you will.
Yeah.
I think the same, you travel in an airline, right? I mean, the functionality is going from A to B, or a car, it's going from point A to B, but it's not just about, can this thing take me from point A to B, right? It is about the experience, right? Whatever that is defined in a car. Talk about travel. We had the taxi and then you have the Uber, right? Functionality is the same. You can go from point A to B. However, what is the experience, right? Are you able to get it when you want it? Are you able to customize the music when you're sitting in it? Somebody greeting you like your best friend, whatever it is, right? So I think it's the same analogy, right, that we all are trying to do as we build products, which are, sort of completely digital nature, whether it's an e-commerce site, it's your brand, whatever it is, right? It is no longer about, can I do a transaction and buy a book from your website, right? It's not about that. It is about the whole experience around, are you suggesting which book I can read? Do you know me, right? So I think anywhere we look, the consumer expectation is really now about experience. I think there's no going back. We are only going forward, and it's getting more and more interesting. The space has a lot of innovation, right? I mean, it's getting more and more creative, if you will, right? And the other side is that, you are probably dead if you're not, doing this. As an example, today, if I get a promotion email, that's a business I'm in, which is men's clothes, I might have a bad experience with that brand. I'll be like, listen, I'm not even shopping in this brand. You know what I mean? I might walk away from the brand, right? I mean, we've done research which says that, 1/3 of the consumers, because, there is a plethora of choices, will walk away from a brand with a bad experience, right? So not only is it important sort of to keep your customers and retain them, but, you may lose them completely if you are not focused on customer experience and just pure functionality. Does that make sense, Anand?
Absolutely makes sense. And I think, Srishti, as I was thinking about it, makes a lot of sense, but I also found it very funny. When you're talking about the car experience, I just realized I'm probably pretty unique. I drive a Maruti Wagon R, and it's the one place where experience actually is one of the things that I actually compromise. But I totally get the idea. Highly personalized experience at scale. That's really what it is. But, Srishti, the question that becomes creating this highly personalized experience, is that really possible? I mean, right now, these, internet products, they cater to thousands, millions, sometimes even billions of people, right? So is this just a pipe dream, or is this just actually achievable? Is this something that can happen? So I'd like to hear how you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and that's where, we get into, the whole intelligence and automation portion of it, right? And I think ultimately we were in a world of batch and blast, right? Like one size fits all. You started doing some basic segmentation. You're like, okay, man, woman, people live here. You know 5 things about a person. You can, do a 1:n kind of a model, right? Like, okay, like this particular segment. But as the amount of data that you have about an individual increases, as you now have technology which can, pretty much crunch and, run algorithms on that data, do some predictive stuff, that's what is now giving you the power to do a 1:1 sort of an experience. Yeah. I mean, think about, let's take a simple example. You may go to a website, I may go to a website, maybe even Simplilearn, right? I mean, I'm sure you're doing some of it already, right? If you know what I have been searching on Google, and you have details of, what emails I have opened, you have some digital footprint data of mine, the kind of programs that I will see on that website might be very unique to me. Yeah. I mean, is it, I mean, the more you know about me, the more unique it can be. And more likely is the fact that I will be interested in the product, right? So I think this is not magic, but it is a magic sauce, right? And all of us are in the technology field. And really the magic sauce is a combination of AI, automation, which then gives that, personalization and then the experiences become consistent, relevant, and, simplified for the user, right? So that's really what it is all about.
That's the essence of it. So I think you mentioned 2 terms, I think, Srishti, that I think are pretty relevant. I'd like to get a little deeper here. Yeah. You talked about simplified automation, and you also talked about orchestration.
Right.
Can you give me a little bit, can you give the audience a little more of a depth of understanding of what those terms really mean? Because I'll tell you, a lot of folks here are from a product background, and they'll be thinking of these two terms and saying, look, it kind of makes sense, but maybe not, right? So can you go a little deeper on that?
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, these are English terms and we can use them how we want, but I'll tell you the way I'm thinking about this space, right? Let's go back to the example where we spoke about segmentation and things like that, right? So I think that, and if I can just even go to like the products that I work on, which is sort of a marketing automation tool, right? As an example. So if you look at that, what you could do is, let's go back 5-6 years. An automation is a tool which lets you do something which you don't have to do manually, right? So let's say you want to send a message to someone. You want to create a segment, you want to come up with a message, and then you want to send it, right? I mean, those are the 3 basic steps that you want to do. It was automated. You don't have to hand type the email addresses. There is some tools which can help you to create the list. You get a little editor where you can type the email and you can schedule it and it will send it, right, at 9 a.m. every morning. Now, that's sort of an automation. Now, how do you simplify this experience for this person doing this job? Let's just take that as an example, right? Today, now you have the power of intelligence, right? So can you, instead of this person trying to do this workflow, can you make this very prescriptive? And can you make this very guided? Can you say that this person says that, my real goal is just to reach 1,000 people who will be very interested and get like, a 20% click-through rate or whatever, just some strategy, right? And then can you auto-generate an audience where it's one click for the person to say, if this is your strategy, this is your right audience, right? If this is your audience, based on historical data, we know that the best time to send them, we'll decide. You don't schedule it at 9 a.m. because, somebody's a 9 a.m. person, somebody's a 10 a.m. person, somebody's a midnight person, right? So let's make sure that the system is simplifying it for you and automating when to send this message, right?
Yep.
Let's say you had to think about what should the message be. Should I say best offer? Should I use this word? What will attract people? What if the system gives you the content, right, and predicts it, right? So my point is that intelligence in every, this is a simple workflow, right? You're trying to message some people. It's a 3-step process. You can sort of extend this to anything, right? I mean, you can extend this to doing an expense system. You can extend this to writing, any software, doing an e-commerce transaction. But can you automate this, right, and simplify the experience? So really simplified automation really is keeping the consumer in mind to simplify the workflow for them. What all can technology do for you now?
Understand.
Intelligence, right? So that's where that comes in, or at least that's the way I'm using it in this context.
Absolutely. And I think, Srishti, one big takeaway also is you're looking at intelligence as machine intelligence in a lot of ways, more than human intelligence. So I think the scale factor comes through machine intelligence. Now, one aspect that I think I'm very curious about, I mean, you're talking about machine intelligence, orchestration. Now, you need to know a lot about your users. You need to have a lot of data, right? So to be able to really get this right, how does the data aspect of it and data signals from consumers shape this experience, right? And I think this is a question that actually one of the audience members has asked as well, right? How does that data signal and the consumer data come in? How does that play into those automation and orchestration?
Yeah. So I mean, let me just very quickly touch on orchestration. So I mean, I think that was simplified automation, and from an orchestration perspective, the only thing I would add is the real-time nature, right? So I mean, I think there is one thing which is the flow, and then there is the, people are, nobody wants we are living, like I said, started out with everybody has a phone, right? Everything is in the moment now, you can't send somebody something which is outdated, right? So as you get the real-time aspect, and you can orchestrate things in the right channel for people, whether they, it's email, phone, mobile, at the right time, that would just, tie in the orchestration portion. Now, coming back to, how, I mean, data is sort of the basic ingredient here, right? I mean, there is no way around that. And ultimately, that's what helps you bring the intelligence, right? So, I mean, I think, ultimately, any algorithm needs historical data, right? It needs real-time data, and then it uses those two to predict, right? Yeah. That's how this technology works, right? I mean, that's like the 101 or whatever of what is, machine learning. So in terms of that, because it's really data-driven, right? I mean, we all understand that we write programs, that we all, grew up writing programs, and we we didn't write programs in this way where the program learns based on historical data and the real-time data and predicts, right? So it's really a database, a data construct. The whole data science and intelligence is highly dependent on data. So definitely that's what is the key enabler, Anand, right? I mean, there is no way around that, right? And the fact that we all are internet, we all are on our phones, giving that plethora of data to our brands, right?
Yeah.
They can use that to do this hyper-personalization for us, right? It's a give and take. Now, if you are one of the consumers who say, you know, and people are going on both sides today, right, that I don't want to share nothing, then clearly the brand will know nothing about you. And it's very difficult for them to get personalize your experience.
Absolutely.
Right? But if you are sort of giving some signals, that's what will be leveraged to personalize your experience, right?
Absolutely. And go a little bit to the side from, you know, so the topic, I think one question that from the audience has come, which I think is quite an interesting question. I'd like to hear your opinion on it. Mm-hmm. Of course, machine intelligence can create personalization on a much larger scale than a human could scale, right? One of the questions that comes is there an output here where machine intelligence goes without bounds? There's no human intervention at all. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, all of us are right now, you know, living in this world that what will happen, you know, in 20 years from now. It's possible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible, but, you know, the important thing is around data quality, right? So the point that today we are not yet there that the systems can totally figure out the noise, and the noise can, you know, change the algorithm completely. But, you know, look at auto-driving cars, right? I mean, it is reading the signals, but you still have issues, right? So it's only getting better, right? I mean, you're reading the signals and making a prediction. I mean, that's
how
what it is, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's real-time data, which you're in real-time able to process because you now have that high-level technology that you know, so okay, you were predicting something and something came in real-time. Can you change, right? So all of that is, you know, we are seeing that it's possible already, right? But it's really about the human touch. In some cases, things are not black and white. In some products, it is about the sentiment. It is about the human touch. So it's those aspects which probably have to get modulated a little bit. And maybe these algorithms will learn that soon too as we input enough data around that. But it's, you know, technology-wise, it's possible, if you will, right? Just technically speaking, if you will.
Yeah. But we're not at that point at this point of time.
We're not at the point because we don't have that sort of set of data today, which we can totally run by for a lot of the industry, right? For some cases, it's getting better.
Makes a lot of sense. So I think we'll get into a little bit of the technology aspects of this as well. I think what, you know, so far we've heard is there's a lot of data that's required to make this hyper-personalization at scale possible. There's some level of intelligent automation that uses the data and figures out what happens. And then there's orchestration at scale, which really takes that automation and applies it to whatever channel or whatever scale you have to apply it to, right? For someone who's here and thinking about, look, I want to get to that place where I start doing hyper-personalization, but I don't know where to start. What technologies should I worry about? What technology capabilities do I need to build out? Can you give us all a little bit of a sense of where do we start? What are the technology enablers? What are the capabilities we need to build out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, ultimately, and I think a lot of people are you know, probably thinking of it, but maybe not completely in a structured manner. I mean, I think ultimately a customer 360, and as much as you can populate that would make sense, right? It doesn't matter what your business is, right? You know, so, I mean, that would be sort of one way to think about if you want to go into this journey of understanding your customer completely and giving them this hyper-personalized experience. Right? Because like we discussed, data is the core. So thinking of each of your customer and filling in as much data around that customer, centralizing that system, you know, all of that is also a technological challenge, right? That could be one way to think about it from a sort of, you know, how do I build up, right? In terms of, you know, and then just depends on the business you can grow up. In terms of, and, you know, it's just not about technology. It is truly, and we all know that, right? It is about building the customer empathy, right? And kind of thinking about the customer first, right? So what is their experience? So it is around that mindset, which is super critical, right? I mean, you have to have that customer mindset, and then you have the technology and the data. And then you sort of think about the experience, right? Whether you do a design thinking, walkthrough, or however, every organization has their own favorite method of doing this. But ultimately, keeping the customer central, what is the journey that you want to present, right? And then you use technology for that. That would be a way to go ahead and build it. And I think today digital transformation and there's a plethora of products. And I think, whether we talk about you need power, and we all are using cloud. Because we need the auto scale if you want to have a lot of data. So it's the usual, right? We need the large machines. We need the whole big data to start the whole thing, right? And then we need that data for our customers, and then use a stack which helps us enabling the experience that we want for our customers, right? That would be a way about it.
Understood. So I think, somebody who's aspiring to become, use these kind of capabilities, right? You're looking at data scientists, product managers, designers. I think, at a very high level, you're thinking about, first of all, the customer empathy and the design thinking is part of it. And then there are specific skills they probably have to learn, right? Are there, any specific areas that you would suggest are pretty relevant common themes and skills that you would recommend for these kind of roles, which are going to be at the sort of cutting edge of these kind of experiences, right? Building these kind of experiences.
Yeah. I think, when I look at data science, and I feel that, it's not, it's sort of like an intersection, if you think of it as a Venn diagram, right, of around domain expertise, right? You kind of have to have the domain expertise in whichever field it is, right? Then there is definitely some level of, math with the whole stats, and then there's computer science, right? It's sort of at the intersection of it. You can't just be computer science and not know anything about the domain, right? Let's say you want to do a fraud detection, so, whatever it is, right? You kind of have to understand the domain a little bit, and then you need to understand stats. So, I think that's really if you want to get into the data science stream, right? If, as a product manager, if you will, right? So there is, it depends on where you are, right? Because ultimately, as a product manager, it's really about looking at the current journeys and thinking about how this can be simplified. I think that's why I bring the whole system. So you're not going to think intelligence in a vacuum, right? Absolutely. Intelligence is a means for a customer experience, right? So, I think it's really about thinking about a simplified customer user experience, right? You have to start from there if you are sort of on the product management side, or you're defining sort of product definition. And the technology partners of yours, right, who are hopefully building, like us, are going to leverage the technology, right? And are going to leverage your data science and say, listen, do you have all of this data to give this simplified experience at the ABC data, right? Let's take an example of, we spoke about send time optimization, right? So let's not send a message to everybody at 9 a.m. Let's send it to them when they open, right? So if somebody said that, listen, that, somebody has to think about that. The data scientist is going to solve the problem by saying, okay, let's collect the current pattern of open times. Let's lay it out on 24 hours. Let's see the peaks, and then let's predict. And, now one day, don't just look at 1 day of data. 15 days is good enough, and then make it rolling. Maybe there's seasonality, whatever, right? That's why you need the math and the, computer science. But to come up with the idea that let's think about an experience which is simplified is really your basic product management sort of thought process, but sort of thinking of it, I would say, in more of a prescriptive, guided fashion, because knowing that our consumers want things simple, right, is one way to think about it.
Got it. And I think, Srishti, we're going to go a little off script a little bit, if you may. I think there's some great questions that are being asked by the audience, and I think we'll keep it open. Even I'll give my views on some of these things from a different perspective, if you may, right? Two very related topics. One, which Vishal is asking, is having automation, does that dilute the human touch? And a very related question that came from Stuti is, she's part of a bank and they have actually automated the entire process, brought it online, and customers are looking at, look, I want that human touch. This is not working for me. So there's an interesting tension here between, simplification through online models and, the human touch potentially, which could be at odds here. Any opinions on that topic?
Yeah. See, I like I said, right, we are in transition. We are not there yet, right? But let's look at the banks, and I exactly don't know what's the use case, but, I look at a chatbot experience, which is a great example of automation and intelligence, right? Now, we all have had our experiences where, the chatbot goes, if you go off script, if you will, it can really go crazy, right? Or, you will not get what you want, and you want the human touch, right? So today we run an integrated model, right? As in, at some point, the chatbot will maybe pull in a human if it can't help you, right? But many of the things are just very easily done with the chatbot, right?
Yeah.
And I don't have to wait for hours. So I would never call a system if I knew that I had to wait for 2 hours. The fact that the time to answer is becoming really short, I like the automated system. Now, there is a fallback because today, we don't have all the data points, right? I mean, the banking systems are new. They don't have all the questions asked in the chatbot. The chatbot hasn't learned. There isn't enough data, right, for it to know all the patterns. Your Alexa can, play all the songs, but, maybe doesn't know all the accents, right? So ultimately, the more we use these systems, the more data they have, the better they'll get. Again, like I said, there's no magic, but there is a magic sauce, right?
Yeah.
And the sauce needs more ingredients, right? So really, as we use these tools, the automation will get better. We need to come up with mechanisms to back it up with human touch. In this example of the chatbot, which could be a bank use case or not.
Absolutely.
But as a technologist, I am quite bullish on intelligence and automation, and I think that it basically moves. It's not like people have nothing to do, right? It moves what you're doing, right? I mean, we start imagine we keep imagining more creative things. So it's we don't even know where we'll be headed. So it's not about it's about just like moving up the chain in my mind, right? That's the way I feel.
And Srishti, I'm going to take one element of what you just said and actually maybe expound on that a little bit. I think what you said is, as long as that experience being built actually does better than what the human touch was able to bring, and make it a lot more personalized, you have won, right? The technology and the simplification.
Right.
And just a personal experience from my side, when COVID hit, right? EdTech, before EdTech was a different world, and post-COVID was a different world for EdTech. And we found that the acceptance of online training, I think there's a significant spike in how that changed very quickly. And sometimes it's also mindsets that have to change. So to these specific examples, sometimes it's also about the mindset of the customer, and you got to kind of get it technology where it actually is relevant and when it is relevant as well. So I think that's another fair point there. Another question that's being asked is, if you look at the data that's actually used to really customize and personalize, we start getting into pretty interesting places where data privacy and things like that happen. And I think you addressed this during the conversation. But love to hear a little bit of thought there, because I think there were a couple of questions on that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is, I think it is, we're going on two extremes on this, right? I mean, like I said, personally, right, if you are wanting that personal experience, there's no way around to share data. But again, there is no one rule for everyone, right? I mean, we do understand that, data, we've had enough issues. Security is super important, right? That's why, there's a whole industry around security and encryption and how can you protect the data when it exists, where it exists, right? But I mean, my view is that it is a personal choice, right? Yeah. And today, as technology companies, we need to keep privacy, it should be a customer choice. Privacy needs
Absolutely.
to be a customer choice completely. Security is something that, we need to be responsible about as product developers, right? I mean, security needs to be a core tenet of development, right? So privacy is a choice for the customers. And if they choose to say, I want to be private, forget me, and whatever it is, then we need to do that, right? And respect that. And we need to make sure our systems are secure, right? I mean, our software enablers, if our systems are not secure, less people will say yes to, let me give you my data, right? We also see the whole Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z. I don't know what is the terminology now. I mean, the younger generation. My daughter who's 12, my son who's 16, right? I mean, they are, they are technology. The hesitation is less, right? So you don't know where it's headed, right? So it is a responsibility at least to make sure it's secure, independent of privacy. Privacy is super critical as well, and it needs to be consumer choice. So that's
wonderful. And maybe just to go back to a couple of questions back, what we talked about, the capabilities and skills we'd like to have to really get the simplicity and personalization skills happening. We have a poll for the for the audience today. I'd like to hear and understand what level of preparedness you have in terms of some of these domain skills we talked about, design thinking, customer empathy, and some of these hard skills. So Stuart, if you don't mind, let's get the poll out there. I'd like to see how people feel they fare in terms of a scale of 1 to 5 for some of these strong skills that are required as a basis for personalization at scale. Now, of course, there are a lot of skills, so please do read through this, and then the answer is pretty simple, rate 1 to 5 in terms of where you stand. And again, I'll just read through the skills we have on the screen. We are curious to know, if you look at the list of skills there, how would you rate yourself? Novice, getting started. 5, expert, I actually advise other people. Now, Srishti would be a 5, so just let's be very clear. And while we're waiting, there was a question on, where should we start the journey? I think there was a question that came up in the Q&A. Some of these skills you're seeing on the screen would be great places to start, right? And so, fundamentally, it's your choice. I think Srishti said it really well. There's an automation domain, there's a data domain, there's an orchestration side, there's a customer empathy and design thinking side. That comes down to which role you choose and which area you go into, right? So I think this is, the question that answers that question to some extent.
We are done. And the way the poll is answered is people entered in a number, so it's not really going to display you a survey of the result. But
okay. Gotcha. So how do we know the result? All right. I have to assume that with any statistical distribution, you've got an average and you've got the outliers. So I have to assume there are a few 3s, 4s, and 5s here, probably a lot of 1s and 2s here. But again, the whole idea of this was to give you a little bit of a broad view of what I think needs to be picked up. And then the journey is yours to take personally, right? Srishti, back to you. I want to thank you so much for your time today. It was an absolute pleasure having a conversation and hearing your thoughts on this. And honestly, there are not a lot of brands out there and a lot of leaders there who have this kind of clarity of thought on this kind of very advanced topic. So really appreciate your sharing your views today.
Right. Thank you. It was a pleasure, and wishing the audience all the best in whatever path they decide to take. All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Srishti. Back to you, Stuart.
Thank you, Anand. And we will do one last poll here to ask our audience, what are you looking forward to learning? Various skills, things that were discussed or touched on in today's webinar. And you can see that data science, AI, machine learning are popular, so are product and project management and RPA rather. So we'll be able to follow up with you. You can contact us at AskUs@Simplilearn to learn more about these different topics. I want to thank Srishti and Anand. Here is Srishti's LinkedIn contact information if you'd like to reach out to her. And I'd also like to mention our Skill Up program, which gives access to over 300 in-demand skills in various technology areas. And this is a free program, gives you access to our video content and lets you essentially preview our certification courses. So I will put a link for that into the chat box right here. And I'd like to also invite you to join our next webinar 1 week from tonight. Wednesday, March 31st is a digital marketing webinar, Storytelling with Marketing Analytics, with Matt Bailey, the president of SiteLogic, and he'll discuss how to communicate what your marketing analytics tell you to your peers, your colleagues, your bosses, in ways that they can access and understand. And again, I will put a link into the chat box for that. That concludes our webinar today. Please do contact us through our social channels on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you and keep in touch with you. And thank you all for being here today.